It's the dawn of a new era for Titans fans. Recently, the team anointed a rookie quarterback named Will Levis as their starting quarterback. The Titans drafted Levis in the second round of the 2023 NFL Draft, but he's far from your typical second-round pick. Not long ago, Levis was considered a potential first overall pick, but his stock plummeted leading up to the draft. Was the drop justified, or did the Tennessee Titans just steal a bona fide Francis quarterback? Well, let's take a deeper look at his story. If there was one word used to describe Will Levis as a child, that word would be intense. Levis brought a seriousness and an intensity to every aspect of his life, even as a youngster. When Levis was in high school, he got 2 Chronicles 15:7 tattooed on his bicep. The tattoo is in reference to the Bible verse that states, "Be strong and do not give up, for your work will be rewarded." The quote resonated with Levis because it reminded him of words that his grandfather shared with him at a young age. Kelly Levis told his grandson to never, never, never give up. He even gave him a stone with those words engraved in it. Levis was raised in a family of former athletes. His grandfather was an All-American football player at Yale and eventually became the head coach of the program. His dad played college football as well at a Division III school called Denison University, and his mom was a 2-time All-American soccer player at Yale. They raised Levis to be hardworking, respectful, and disciplined. As a high school senior, Levis set Xavier High School records in passing yards and passing touchdowns. By the end of the year, he was rated as a 3-star recruit, just outside the top 30 at his position in his class. Other quarterbacks came with more pedigree, but Levis was still heavily recruited by some major college programs. Since Levis maintained great academic grades, he was offered scholarships to plenty of Ivy League schools, but Levis was eager to play for a college program that would get looks from NFL scouts. Schools such as Florida State and Iowa sent scholarships Levis's way, but he declined. Instead, he committed to Penn State University to stay closer to his family. As soon as Levis showed up at Penn State, he received a lot of attention. First off, he was 6'4" and close to 230 pounds. His presence and appearance was that of a professional quarterback. But on top of that, his throwing arm was seemingly from another planet. Most of his game was extremely raw, but this guy could straight up throw bombs all over the place. Still, with a slew of quarterbacks on the roster, he was redshirted for his freshman year. Over time, he worked hard and earned the backup quarterback position behind Sean Clifford. Clifford was another young star that was also drafted in the 2023 draft. And it was clear that Levis wasn't going to surpass Clifford on the depth chart. So after his third year in the program, he entered the transfer portal in hopes of finding a school that would give him a greater opportunity to show off his talents. One team that pursued him heavily was the Kentucky Wildcats. Kentucky had just hired Liam Cohen as their offensive coordinator, who'd just worked a stint with the Los Angeles Rams. Cohen saw Levis as a perfect fit in his system. Add the fact that the Wildcats competed in the SEC, football's most powerful conference, and Levis decided that the opportunity was too good to pass up on. As soon as he arrived in Lexington, Levis made a strong impression. He was well-spoken, confident, and ready to work his butt off. It only took 9 days before he was named the team's starting quarterback. The first time he stepped on the field in a Kentucky uniform, he stole the hearts of the fans. He threw 3 touchdowns, showing off his pro-level rifle of an arm. His rise to stardom escalated extremely quickly. If you watched a 5-minute highlight pack of Will Levis, it'd be incredibly obvious that he was destined for greatness. He led Kentucky over LSU. Then against Louisville, he showed off his ridiculous abilities as a runner. On one famous play, he juked a defender, then hurdled over another. It was like a display of a man amongst a bunch of young boys. By the end of the season, Levis led his team to the Citrus Bowl, where Kentucky capped off their season with a victory. Throughout the season, Levis proved that he was a viable NFL prospect. The further the season went, more scouts tuned in, and before long, Levis was rated as one of the top-ranked prospects in the draft. But he still decided to return for one more year of development in 2022-23. But what was supposed to be an extra year of development turned out to be a year of massive scrutiny for Levis. See, when he was rising to stardom, everyone was in awe. But in his second year, he was now under a microscope. The expectation was for him to dominate, and every mistake he made was captured on video, dissected, and analyzed. Some began to wonder if Levis was truly made of the right stuff. His talent was undeniable, and so was his NFL physical build. His pure throwing ability was superior to his peers, but some of his decisions left a lot to be desired. He often made improper reads that led to sacks and interceptions. In some cases, he failed to read through his progressions. And the biggest criticism was that he put too much faith in his arm. It's one thing to be a talented thrower, but even the best of them need to understand their own limitations and have the awareness to know when to not attempt a throw and concede a play. Interceptions were adding up, and all of a sudden Levis had to answer questions from reporters that weren't just lining up to praise him. He handled it well, but the attacks clearly put him on his heels. As the season progressed, Levis saw Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud surpass him in mock drafts. Eventually, Anthony Richardson was even getting noticed as a quarterback who seemed to be developing more quickly than Levis. It wasn't all Levis's fault. His supporting cast lacked talent during his second year in Kentucky, and he even battled through a toe injury during the second half of the season. Some scouts praised him for his toughness, but others raised concerns regarding the long-term implications of playing through the injury. When the season ended, Levis began preparing for the draft. His character was never questioned before. He was always considered respectful, confident, and hardworking. But word is that he didn't exactly nail his interviews with NFL coaches and managers. Many pointed to his regression during his second season with Kentucky, and instead of taking accountability, he supposedly overcompensated by doubling down on confidence. By the time the process was over, Will Levis was the most picked-apart player in the entire draft class. There was less talk about his rare capabilities that earned him comparisons to Josh Allen and Dak Prescott, and more talk about how he didn't have the football IQ to win at the next level. By the time of the draft, Las Vegas placed the odds of Levis going in the top 10 at minus 1,500. That means they thought that the odds of him going top 10 were above 90%. It wasn't a matter of if Levis was going in the first round, but a matter of when. But once the draft started, players started going off the board, and Levis patiently remained in his chair. Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud went 1 and 2. Then the Colts selected Anthony Richardson with the 4th overall pick. And before you know it, teams were picking positional players one after the other. The camera kept going back to capture Levis's facial reactions after every pick because his slide in the draft was so shocking. He did his best to keep a positive attitude on camera, but clearly it was tough for the kid. The Titans went with an offensive lineman. The Lions used 2 picks on non-quarterbacks. Tampa Bay went with defense, and Minnesota selected a wide receiver. Every single time, the camera turned back to Levis's reaction. It took until the second day before the Titans traded up to pick Levis with the 33rd overall pick. While we understand that the bonus that comes with being a first-round selection is a huge miss for Levis, the reality is that the drop could have been the best thing for his football career. If Levis was forced into an NFL starting job too quickly, he would have likely been exposed for his weaknesses. Instead, with the Titans, he'll have the opportunity to back up Ryan Tannehill, a league veteran that's enjoyed a relatively successful career in the NFL. In a lot of ways, Tannehill is the perfect mentor for Levis. While Tannehill isn't blowing anyone away with his physical attributes, he thinks the game at a high level and has earned a reputation as a capable game manager. But he's been on the decline for a few seasons, and at age 35, his best years are behind him. He lacks big playability and doesn't have the arm to strike fear into his opponents. Everything he lacks is what Will Levis has in his arsenal. Now Tannehill's gone down with injury, and naturally, Will Levis is receiving an extended tryout as the team starter. We know there will be moments where he shows off his incredible downfield throwing ability and his physical capabilities, but he's also likely to throw some picks and make some critical mistakes along the way. Is he the future franchise quarterback for the Titans? Well, that's yet to be determined. But not many players have the capabilities of shifting the balance of power in the NFL like Will Levis does.